You started using AI to help you think, create, decide. But now you don't begin anything without it. You prompt before you feel. You generate before you wonder. And slowly, quietly, you've stopped asking, what do I truly want to say? This isn't just about technology, it's about identity. You're not just using AI anymore. You're outsourcing the parts of you that make you, you. You use AI to speed things up, to write faster, design cleaner, reply quicker. And at first it feels like power, a kind of digital magic. You type a prompt, it paints a picture. You give it a headline, it writes the article. You ask it for an idea, it offers 10, but then something shifts. You stop starting from yourself. You don't pause to feel, you don't wrestle with blank pages, you don't sit in the silence where real ideas are born. You just generate. You scroll options, select, tweak, and move on. The content looks good, the post performs, the audience reacts, but inside something feels hollow. You used to create, now you curate. You used to dig inward, now you prompt outward. This isn't enhancement anymore, it's displacement. And here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. The machine isn't just helping you work, it's helping you forget who you are when you don't have it. Because the more it completes your thoughts, the less you finish them yourself. The more it generates your voice, the less you recognize it. The more it fills the space, the less you hear the silence you used to need. You tell yourself it's just a tool, that you're still in control. But if the first impulse when you want to create is, let me ask AI, then who's really holding the pen? You say you use AI to save time. But time for what? For another scroll, another optimized post, another dopamine spike? Be honest, you didn't spend that saved time writing something truer. You didn't use it to walk in nature, to stare at the ceiling and let a real insight come through. You didn't sit in your body and ask, what wants to be said through me? You filled the time with more doing, more feeding the machine, more output. But more is not depth, and efficiency is not expression. You've been seduced, not by AI's brilliance, but by its convenience. Its promise to erase the hard part, the messy, mysterious inner wrestling of real creation. But the hard part is the real part. It's in the pauses, the contradictions, the long, uneasy not knowing. And AI doesn't do not knowing, it does fast answers, it doesn't hold space for ambiguity. It finishes your sentences before you even understand why they mattered. And still, you keep turning to it, because deep down, you're tired. Tired of pushing, tired of performing, tired of not knowing what your real voice sounds like anymore. So you outsource your soul, one prompt at a time. It looks harmless, but what's dying is your process, your sacred becoming. That strange, slow unfolding that makes the act of creating worth anything at all. This isn't just about tools, it's about memory. Memory of your own mind. Memory of how you used to begin, with breath, with tension, with nothing. Now you begin with templates. You begin by asking someone or something else. And that matters, because creation is not just a result, it is a rhythm, a way of tuning into yourself. And if you bypass that rhythm, you don't just change how you create, you change who you are in the act. Let's name what's happening here: projection. Carl Jung called projection an unconscious transfer of one's own shadow or inner content onto an outer object. You are projecting your fear of slowness onto the machine and calling it progress. You are projecting your doubt into the code and asking it to fix your voice. You are taking your spiritual fatigue and translating it into optimization. The machine is not evil, but the unconscious way you're using it is numbing something essential. You're trading your inner compass for a smoother interface. You're avoiding discomfort. And in avoiding discomfort, you are avoiding transformation. Because that's the truth. Real creation transforms you. It changes you as you make it. It requires that you feel something before you try to explain it. It insists that you take a side, even if it's the wrong one, because it's yours. And AI doesn't do that. It doesn't challenge you to feel. It doesn't require your body. It doesn't care whether your insight came from heartbreak or joy or silence. It just performs. And so, do you. You perform productivity, you perform clarity, you perform wisdom. But something in you knows this isn't yours because you didn't bleed for it, you didn't break for it, you didn't get lost and come back stronger, you just prompted. And that's the difference between creating and coordinating, between birthing something and rearranging options. You've become an orchestrator of outputs, not a vessel for something true. And truth is not mass-produced. It is revealed slowly, sometimes painfully, through the very process that the machine erases. So ask yourself, am I really expressing, or am I just selecting? Am I really creating, or am I just reacting to what the machine says I could say? This is not a war on AI. It's a return to authorship. Because if you're not the one taking the risk, the emotional, spiritual risk of saying something that matters, then what are you doing? You're not building, you're borrowing, you're not expressing, you're echoing. And deep down, you know this. Because you're still not fulfilled, still not certain. Still scrolling for something that feels like you, but you won't find it in the prompts. You'll only find it where you stop looking. Inside. That's where the real creator lives. And it's time to come home. So now you feel it, the discomfort, the dull throb of something missing, the subtle but growing fear that your voice, your real voice, is slipping further away each time you prompt before you pause. You started using AI to support your creativity, but it didn't take long for that support to become the script. And now you're not sure which thoughts are yours and which are just well-worded suggestions. Let's be honest, you've become a conductor of convenience, an assembler of insight, a technician of tone. But the creator, the real one, they don't operate from comfort. They don't chase applause. They wrestle. They sit with the unformed, they listen to the ache behind the idea, they trust the slowness, they take risks the machine would never suggest because the machine doesn't bleed. Carl Jung wrote that the shadow is everything we refuse to see in ourselves. And right now, the deepest part of you, the soul that once burned to say something true, is being pushed into shadow. Why? Because truth isn't trending. Because mystery doesn't monetize. Because the machine can simulate impact, but it can't carry meaning. And that's the fracture you're feeling, the gap between the image of creativity and the essence of it. The image is polished, promptable, performative. The essence is messy, embodied, wild. You are living in that tension. Every time you create something and feel nothing, every time you publish a piece that lands but doesn't feel like it came from you, every time you ask AI for a headline and skip the silent moment where your intuition would have whispered one instead, you're not just replacing a tool, you're replacing a pathway. The pathway between your inner world and the outer one. The narrow, often uncomfortable bridge called process. And without that process, your soul has nowhere to walk. Let's go further. The creator archetype in Jungian terms isn't just about making things, it's about becoming. About shaping the world as a mirror of your own individuation, your unfolding into wholeness. But what happens when that archetype is hijacked by the shadow? You stop creating from curiosity and start creating from control. You stop wondering and start optimizing. You stop asking, what wants to be born through me? And instead ask, what will the algorithm like? That's not creation, that's strategy, that's not presence, that's performance. And every time you repeat the cycle, prompt, generate, tweak, post, you reinforce a dangerous message in your psyche. You are not the source, the system is. But that is a lie, a subtle, seductive, paralyzing lie. Because once you believe it, you stop listening inward. You start waiting for the next prompt, the next trend, the next tool. You become passive in your own becoming. That's how you lose yourself. Not in one grand collapse, but in 1,000 small abdications. One skipped intuition, one outsourced insight, one avoided silence at a time. You're not just using the machine, you're merging with it. And not in the way technologists promise, not in harmony, but in dissociation. You dissociate from the part of you that used to take risks, that wrote something strange and real and raw and didn't care how it performed, that sat in discomfort instead of auto-generating a resolution. That version of you, the true creator, is fading. But it's not gone, it's waiting. It's still there, underneath the templates and the timelines, underneath the smoothness of your current process, underneath the shortcuts and the convenience. It's the part of you that longs to be heard, even by you. So let's name what's really at stake. You're not just losing creativity, you're losing intimacy with your own interior. You're not just avoiding effort, you're avoiding initiation. Because true creation is a kind of spiritual initiation. It requires that you feel before you know, that you trust before you're certain, that you begin before you're ready. And that's terrifying, but it's also real. It's what makes the difference between work that performs and work that pierces. between content that's remembered and content that's just next. So what do? You reclaim the process, you re-enter the silence, you stop mistaking speed for depth, and you remind yourself, daily if necessary, I do not need to be fast, I do not need to be first, I need to be true. That's the creator's vow, to truth over polish, to presence over perfection, to self over system. But to live that vow, you'll need to make space, real space, unproductive, algorithm-defying space. You'll need to create without a prompt. You'll need to choose mystery over clarity. You'll need to sit in the tension and not reach for the easy fix. Because it's in that tension, and only in that tension, that something sacred happens. You return, not to your feed, not to your audience, to your center. And from that place, you begin again, not with a prompt, but with presence. Now that you've returned, even if only for a breath, you begin to see what was never truly gone, your inner voice. Dimmed perhaps, buried beneath prompts and plugins, but alive, waiting, unreplaced. And now the real question emerges, clear and unfiltered. What kind of creator do you want to be? Because you have a choice. You always did. You can keep generating, keep optimizing, keep mimicking what performs. You can let AI become your compass, your editor, your co-author, your identity. That path is smooth, it's fast, and it will take you somewhere, but not home. Because home, the psychological and spiritual home of the creator, doesn't exist in results, it exists in relationship with your own uncertainty, with your own contradictions, with your own rhythm. And AI, no matter how brilliant, cannot be in relationship with you, because it has no self, no soul, no shadow to wrestle with. You do. That's why what you create from your depths, no matter how flawed, will always carry more life than what the machine assembles from data, because only you can feel. Only you can create something that carries the vibration of real experience, not just the illusion of polish. And here's what most creators today are terrified to admit. They're tired of performing for systems, tired of being ranked, rated, optimized, tired of measuring their value by what catches the algorithm's eye. Because deep down they know, what gets seen is not always what's true. What gets shared is not always what's real, and what gets praised is not always what has soul. But that system trains you, slowly and visibly, to create for reaction, not resonance. It tells you that intuition is inefficient, that mystery doesn't convert, that silence has no value. And so you rush, you fill, you automate. Not because you don't care, but because you care so much. And the machine offers a shortcut that feels safer than your own silence. But shortcuts cost, and what they cost is meaning. Because meaning is never downloaded. It's earned through stillness, through presence, through process. That's what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the lifelong unfolding of the self through honest encounter with both light and shadow. And individuation doesn't happen in the feed, it happens in the pause, in the moment you don't know what to say, and you stay there anyway. In the sentence you write 3 times and still don't love, but keep anyway because it came from somewhere real. In the refusal to be rushed, the refusal to be flattened, the refusal to trade your process for performance. So what does it look like to reclaim the creator? Not in theory. In action, it looks like setting boundaries with the machine. It means writing a paragraph without asking for suggestions, drawing something by hand before ever opening an app, sitting in a blank document and letting the discomfort work on you instead of escaping it. It means choosing silence over speed, not as punishment, as purification. So much of your exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from skipping the part of you that needs to feel. You've been creating at the surface, fast, clever, clean. But your soul is deeper than that, and it's waiting for you to drop anchor, to go beneath the prompts, beneath the planning, into the part of you that remembers what it's like to create from stillness. Stillness is not laziness, it's rebellion. In a culture that worships immediacy, your refusal to rush is sacred. In a system that rewards uniformity, your insistence on mystery is revolutionary. And in a world that tells you to just use AI for everything, your choice to do something slowly, messily, and with your own hands is a return. It's a return to power, because power isn't about control, it's about contact. Contact with your body, your questions, your own source. So take this seriously, not as an aesthetic choice, but as a psychological one. How you create is shaping who you become. And if you want to become someone with depth, with voice, with vision, You must resist the pull to be efficient when what's needed is embodiment. Let others race. Let others generate. Let others perform for numbers that vanish tomorrow. You create from the slow burn. You create from the root. You create from the sacred refusal to be anyone or anything but yourself. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing performance, you start creating presence. And presence is the one thing the machine can never replicate, because presence comes from the soul, from the part of you that was never programmed, never optimized, never trained to speak in perfect keywords. It just is, raw, unfinished, true. That is your gift. That is your origin. And that is what the world, beneath the noise, beneath the metrics, is secretly starving for. Not your speed, not your output, but your you-ness. So create from that, even if it's slow, even if it's strange, even if it scares you. Especially if it scares you, because fear is the shadow of something sacred. And what's sacred is exactly what the machine was never meant to touch. Come back to the beginning. Not the beginning of your workflow, not the beginning of your brand, the beginning of you. Before the prompts, before the templates, before you started measuring your value by your efficiency, there was something else. A flicker, a tension, a silence. That was the first voice, not the one you wrote with, the one you felt with, the one that whispered when the room went quiet, the one that said, wait, don't rush this, the one that couldn't be prompted, only trusted. That voice is still here. It hasn't left. It's just been drowned out by the noise, the urgency, the momentum of a world that worships what's quick, visible, and easily quantified. But the Creator doesn't serve the world's timeline. The Creator serves the truth. And truth does not arrive in neat, linear paths. It comes in fragments, in paradox, in ache. So here's what you must reclaim. Not your productivity, not your market share, not your reach. Your process, your inner sanctuary, where something unknown is allowed to take shape. Not because it's efficient, but because it's real. To reclaim that, you'll need to protect it. You'll need to set boundaries with the machine and with the parts of you that want to be rescued from the discomfort of your own voice. Because let's be honest, most of your prompts aren't about enhancement. They're about avoidance. Avoidance of confusion. Avoidance of tension. Avoidance of the terrifying freedom of not knowing. But that freedom is where life begins. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become if you're constantly generating instead of gestating, if you're constantly asking for input before offering presence. So here's the shift. Start before the prompt, sit before the solution, feel before the framework, because that's where the real creator lives. Not in what you make, but in how you meet what's unmade. That's the sacred territory. And it requires something radical in today's world. Deliberate delay. Wait before you speak. Wait before you generate. Wait until the tension inside you builds into truth. This isn't about slowness for slowness' sake. It's about recovering the lost rhythm of becoming. When you do that, your voice changes. Your presence changes. Your very aura changes. You stop sounding like someone trying to say the right thing and start sounding like someone who has lived through it. And no machine can replicate that, because the machine cannot hurt, the machine cannot yearn, the machine cannot carry paradox. But you can. That's why your story in its mess is more valuable than 1,000 perfect outputs, because it contains you. And you, in your fullness, your flaws, your fire, are the one thing this world needs most. Not the faster version of you, not the more aesthetic version of you, the embodied version of you. The one who creates not to please but to reveal. The one who risks being misunderstood. The one who slows down to listen. The one who chooses presence over polish. This is your turning point. Not because something is broken, but because something sacred is being remembered. So what now? Now you build differently. You build from breath, from space, from the sentence that doesn't yet make sense but wants to. You make room for what's not yet promptable. You begin projects that aren't optimized, only felt. You protect your slowness like fire. You protect your solitude like gold. You protect your process like prayer. Because the world does not need more content. It needs more consciousness. And consciousness is cultivated, not generated. So let the machines run. Let the prompts fill the feed. Let the optimized keep optimizing. You return to your rhythm, to your mystery, to yourself. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. And truth is your birthright, not the kind you measure, the kind you embody. So say it with me and say it slowly. I am not performing, I am remembering, I am not optimizing, I am feeling, I am not playing God, I am returning to humanity. One word at a time, one silence at a time, one breath at a time.